Hello everyone, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. Yet another week of fantastic fantasy sports talk. We have a fantastic week and show ahead of us to start it off. We are going to be discussing some NBA topics, specifically focusing on this rookie class and what impressed me the most from them in the Summer League. We're going to start off though with Rookie of the Year odds from the Summer League, and then we have some kind of interesting fantasy football segments kind of based off some ESPN articles I read about players set to score either more or less TDs for the upcoming season. As we all know, while TDs might not be the biggest indication of whether or not you have drafted a fantasy star, they are still integral to the game of fantasy football, and so I thought it would be very interesting to go over this article and present you with some evidence of my own based off of that. And then we also have one little IDP player profile at the end of the show about a guy who really does not seem to get the respect he deserves because he might be one of the better defenses in the league, if not the best defense in the league. But before we begin with any of that exciting stuff, I do want to remind you yet again to like, follow, and subscribe to the show as a whole. It is greatly appreciated by all involved. We receive a ton of tips and donations as well. So if you consider doing that, please consider leaving them at the link GSMC.cloud. Is a huge support to both me, my fellow podcasters, and the network as a whole. Also, if you have any burning questions, comments, or concerns, you can leave them there as well, and they will be answered and addressed at the beginning of the next episode. Without further ado, let's get into a show to start off the week right. And we start off the week by looking at the rookies of the NBA class. We did this last week with the NFL a little bit. Very exciting class there, and not necessarily the same can be said about the NBA. It seems more balanced than high-level talent at the top. But if the Summer League was any indication, this proves for a very wide-open Rookie of the Year debate. All of these players, it's going to come down to who fits in what scheme, which team might overperform, because all of these rookies are on teams that might be in some kind of rebuilding effort or retooling effort, so to speak. But for now, I think that this race is very close, closer than people expect, and a lot of new candidates were able to emerge in terms of performance in the Summer League. So without further ado, let's jump right into this segment. Starting off at number 5, a guy who I think could have a say in terms of minutes for the team he's playing for. I think he would add a fresh sense of rejuvenation to this team, and that is Matas Buzelis of the Chicago Bulls. I really like him. He's very aggressive on defense. His on-ball D is spectacular. And for a Chicago Bulls team that is kind of getting up there in age, Vucevic is not going to stay there forever. DeRozan, obviously, moving on. I think that they need to focus on the youth that they have, and I think this could prove to be a fantastic pickup. This guy's had experience in Europe. At plus 900, he has good value as well. It's all going to come down to how the Bulls view their own rebuilding process. Do they think they're further along than expected because they have the older players in their squad that can help these young players? Or do they really want to focus on a youthful movement and include a guy like Buzelis in the rotation, because he averaged 20.3 points per game in the Summer League? So that just goes to show that this guy really wants to be a part of the Chicago Bulls roster and impact them heavily in a positive manner. So at plus 900, I really like this kind of pick because there's always someone in the NBA Rookie of the Year discussion who pops out of nowhere, and this could be the kid to do that. I really think that, especially on a team that's hopefully trying to create some youthful kind of manner to their play, I feel like Buzelis can be that guy. Coming in at number 4, though, is another guy who I really like because he's a pure shooter that the Lakers desperately needed. Playing in the Summer League really helped him get the experience that maybe will help him distribute the ball a little more and kind of pad his stats in that department as well. But Dalton Connect certainly feels like someone who can fit into the Lakers rotation. If there was one spot of diagnosis to improve the Los Angeles Lakers in any manner, it was pure shooting ability. They needed a guy on the perimeter to stretch the floor, and Connect can be that guy. He was perhaps the best shooter in college basketball last year, plus 900. I think that he certainly is going to be more of a rotational guy because it will highly depend on how the Lakers play. Maybe JJ Redick wants to balance the egos in the room, keep LeBron and AD comfortable while still rotating in players that he believes fills their needs as well because they're still the stars of the team. So by no means is Dalton Connect going to be a workhorse for the Los Angeles Lakers. I just think he's going to set a bar for them. I think that he's also a player that J.J. Redick might like because of his shooting. J.J. Redick was a pure shooter, and so that could carry over, and maybe he gets more minutes than people expect. But as of now, at plus 900, I view him in kind of the same tier as Buzelis, where he might not contribute right away, but when he does, it's highly valuable, and it will be nice to watch, and he's a nice little change of pace for the Los Angeles Lakers offense, especially now that you feel like LeBron is on the precipice of retiring. Perhaps changing their mindset in terms of offensive output could lead to Dalton Connect becoming the new face of this franchise. But I still think he is in that second tier of NBA rookies. Coming number 3, a guy who kind of dropped in the rankings a little bit, but I still think adds good value and length and versatility to this Atlanta Hawks team, Zachary Razakar, the number 1 overall pick at plus 800. I think this is a guy who will consistently improve as the NBA season progresses. I think that right now he has all the traits to prove why he's the number 1 overall pick. Good three-point shot for someone of his height. Good length for someone of his height. But I really think that it needs to translate to the NBA. That's the question with him. Will his game properly translate to the NBA? And now to an Atlanta Hawks team that might view him as a second option because Dejounte Murray is out of there. Trae Young definitely needs a running partner to play off of. Can Zachary Razakar really be that guy? It's going to be a lot of pressure on him as well because of the fact that this class was low level. And perhaps the Hawks could have gone out and got someone different, or maybe even traded down, as people were talking about. But as of right now, I feel like Razakar definitely is someone to keep an eye on more towards the end of the season, not at the beginning of the season, because I still feel like he's going to need to be integrated into this Atlanta Hawks team a little bit more than people would expect. But he has all the traits. He has the size, he has the length. Now it's all about putting those pieces of the puzzle together. And it's all about concentrating on getting to the best point of what he can be for the Atlanta Hawks, because he could be a valuable asset in the next 5 to 10 years for the Atlanta Hawks. But these top 2 guys really could interchange a little bit as the year goes on. Maybe they fall out of this completely because of the fact that they're mainly so solid at one facet of their game that you can really ignore some of the other facets. But coming in at number 2 is Reed Sheppard, who, outside of Dalton Connect, is probably the best shooter in terms of rookies. 20 points per game, 49% field goal percentage in the Summer League at plus 650. I think that, Reed Sheppard is going to be someone who can play minutes in this league early on, because the Houston Rockets really are a team that's trying to find ways that teammates can fit together. I don't necessarily think they have a set starting 5. So Reed Sheppard was going to find his way early and often into this rotation. That could be why he's so high. But outside of his shooting ability, there are huge question marks surrounding certain aspects of his game. Can he defend at a high level? Can he distribute the ball at a high level? And that's going to be called into question. I still like his upside as a shooter. But when I think about team fits especially, do the Houston Rockets really view him as someone who can step in and be a difference maker in every aspect of the game on the offensive and defensive side of the ball? I'm not so certain. And that's what could be holding him back. That being said, his shooting prowess could help him and lead him to high production in that scoring area, but I do need to see some improvement in other facets of his game in order for me to truly cement him as one of the top contenders for the Rookie of the Year. But at plus 650, it's kind of a nice little bet there. And if you want someone who's a pure shooter to bet on, then Shepard could be your guy. But coming in number 1 is the guy who I've been saying all along finally needs to get his flowers in terms of being in the NBA Rookie of the Year discussion. And that, of course, is the big man, Zach Edey. Now, a lot of people will question him being at number 1 in terms of contention, but at the end of the day, the one factor that I can't ignore is something that I've been thinking all along. How are you going to stop him in terms of the size he presents? He's a big body that you are forced to defend. And in that way, by being forced to defend him, it opens up so many players in the ball. He can just sit in the post, get the ball down low, and then read defenses and do whatever he wants. He can impose his will on a game in many ways, and even though you can kind of fault him because he's so big, he's kind of a liability on defense, you still have to compensate for what he brings to the court. There's no way around him. You can't just ignore the fact that there's a 7'6" or so guy in the middle of the paint who could either score at will or distribute the ball because you're dropping onto him and you're just opening up shooters around him. That's what Zach Edey presents, and that's why I really like the fact that he's now the number 1 contender for the Rookie of the Year, because you just cannot ignore him. He's a player who's going to have his way in certain moments, and therefore he should and will deserve to sit atop the Rookie of the Year ladder when all is said and done. But that should just about do it for this segment. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Coming next, we have an interesting segment, like I said, based off an ESPN article about players who are set to score more or less touchdowns. We'll be right back to talk about those on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.